Welcome to the workshop on comprehensive assessment of parents. Assessments in child welfare hold a basic goal of evaluating the safety and well-being of children. One of the most important ways to meet these goals is to get to know the child's family, including what they are like, how they function on a day-to-day basis, what they need to provide a safe and nurturing family home for the children, and the strengths that can be built upon to get them there. In order to learn about the family, we in the field need balanced and comprehensive assessments. However, getting the information necessary to do that can at times seem daunting. What we would like to propose in this session are strategies to make this assessment process much more natural and meaningful. We will start the session with an assisted visualization to get us all thinking about the experience of getting help. We will then hear from Sherry Tomlinson, a parent who experienced child welfare, and then from Brittany Walker Pettigrew, a child welfare professional. Let's begin. If you are comfortable, please close your eyes or lower your head while you picture someone with whom you are very close, a family member, your child, or a close friend. Imagine the person or child is going through a crisis, maybe a medical, legal, or financial, so significant that it will impact your life dramatically. You will be required to change your life in every way, and you will have to interact with agencies and organizations, including governmental agencies with which you are completely unfamiliar. You are confused and unsure about where or to whom to turn for help. The person you encounter about the situation quickly asks you a series of questions with little explanation about the purpose of the questions. You ask questions but get very brief and incomplete explanations. You leave frustrated and feeling guilty for reasons you don't understand. You feel alienated and not helped at all. The next person you encounter asks more questions and tells you that you will have to come back at another time to fill out more paperwork. You are now getting angry and even more afraid about what will happen next. You start to think that there is no one who will be of assistance and that maybe you should stop trying to get help from these people. The next person you talk with gets a piece of your mind, and you start to express your anger towards each person who asks you for more information. Later on, you encounter a person who actually introduces herself. She explains the position that she has and how she can assist you and your family. The person asks you to tell them what has happened and offers to answer any questions that you may have. The person provides good, thorough answers and asks if you have any more questions. The person then asks what is working well for your family in addressing the crisis and what isn't working well. The person then asks you what you need to help your family during this hard time and what types of supports your family already has. As you begin to describe your family and the support available, you already feel as though there is a way out of this hard time and that it can get better. What does this exercise illustrate? I would imagine that most of you felt much more comfortable with the last person and the chances of that person working well with you and your family to find the best solutions. This simple exercise shows that the pathway to a more balanced and comprehensive assessment with a family is really very simple. Begin with thoughtful engagement, basic compassion, and humanity. Now we will hear from Sherry Tomlinson, a parent who will share her experience with child welfare.
Hello, my name is Sherry and I am a family consultant. And I'm going to talk with you today about comprehensive assessment from a family perspective. Before I do that though, I want to thank you. If you have chosen social work as a profession, and especially if you are in the area of child welfare, your tasks are hard. And I want to thank you for the work that you do. Many times the tasks that you are asked to complete in a family situation are overwhelming. And they're going to include such things as investigating child abuse and neglect. You're going to be asked to assess children and families. You're going to have to refer those families for services. You may be required to set up case plans. And above all, we expect for you to engage with the families that you serve. Initial referrals, very first time that you hear about a family, that can be a little sketchy sometimes, I think. You may not have all the information about a family. And I'm going to talk with you about the initial referral that you might receive about my family. It might say something like, mother arrested due to methamphetamine charges, possession with intent to distribute within 1,000 feet of a school, 7-year-old child placed in police protective custody. That's what you know about me and my family. You probably have a lot of questions. We probably have some problems that we need to talk about right off the start. The first of which will be the biases that are inherently there in this situation and the adversarial system that we have. Our first meeting will more than likely be at a county holding facility. I'm in Orange, you're not. I'm scared, I'm angry. That situation in and of itself is not real conducive to being able to engage with me. What's going through my head is you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I don't trust you, I don't know you, and I don't want to cooperate with you. What's going on in your head may be something like, oh no, not another methamphetamine addict. Oh. We all know what the statistics say. We know that the chances of success in my situation are probably not real great. There's also this competing systems thing. I'm dealing with the criminal justice system, child welfare system. I need to be dealing with the mental health system. All those systems are telling you different things. All of them are saying this is what we deal with first. We need to deal with the criminal justice first. No, we need to deal with the substance abuse. No, wait a minute, we need to deal with her mental health. On top of all that, there's two things that I'm not going to tell you during this initial meeting. One of those is that I can't process the information that you're giving me. That my addiction has severely limited my ability to read as well as process information. And that puts me at a distinct disadvantage. The other thing I'm not going to tell you is that I have a mouthful of infection. Methamphetamine has given me a lot of dental problems. I'm in a lot of pain, both physically and emotionally. And you don't know that. That's a hard situation for anybody to work with, both for the family member as well as the social worker. And I'm going to share with you a couple of tools that worked in my situation. I had a friend, an old colleague, who set me down at one point and said, let's do this together. And it was one of those life event assessments, and where you score a certain amount based on what had happened in your life over a period of, I think it was 2 years. One of the things that surprised me a great deal was that I scored off the charts. And I don't think you're supposed to really aim for those high marks in this one, but that's what I did. At After we did that assessment, then we started working on a timeline so that we could actually sit and look at it. And it was quite shocking. And it was the first time that I was finally able to see things as they really were and finally had an opportunity to talk about them. I want to talk with you about some of the things that I needed back early on and how you can engage with me as a family member. I need information from you. I need to know what it is that you're doing and why. I need to know if what I tell you can be used against me or help me. Most of all, I need compassion from you. I need to know that you care, that you want what's best for my family, and I need your patience. I also need encouragement and hope. In my situation, I had completely given up on myself. I hated myself. I needed someone that was willing to say, I believe in you, I believe in your family, and I'm willing to help you. I'm going to go through real briefly some of the timeline information that was gathered. If you looked at the history of my family situation, you would know that I came from a two-parent household. There was no abuse or neglect in my upbringing. We were a middle-class family. I supposedly had normal childhood, whatever that means. I was college educated. I was a professional. If you look at that, it doesn't sound like it's a high-risk situation for child welfare involvement, does it? Things aren't always as they seem. In 1993, I gave birth to my one and only child. He was the light of my life. By 1995, I'd had 2 miscarriages and was involved in a domestic violence situation. I'd been left unconscious in a parking lot. My child had been forcibly taken from daycare. I was being stalked on a regular basis, and I was living in fear. By 1995, I lost my best friend, Sandy. She was diagnosed with a very rare illness. She died 3 months later. I was also involved in civil and criminal cases that involved my child's father. I was unable to protect myself or my child. Life for me became about safety, about planning for the next crisis. I started finding myself withdrawn. I had to withdraw. I mean, you can't bring other people into a situation like that. It was embarrassing. And we've all heard the expression, and then the straw that broke the camel's back. That happened in 1996. My son, who was about 2.5 at the time, and myself found a family member that had been raped and brutally murdered. And I felt responsible for that. The situation was a confusing one. I was the only link between my family member that was murdered and the man who murdered her. I felt responsible. I couldn't stand it. My house sat between 2 crime scenes. The day that the police released those crime scenes, I packed up and I moved. That was the only thing I knew to do. In 1997 and 98, I started this real downward spiral into depression. I had uncontrollable crying, unable to sleep, nightmares. I isolated myself, and then I was introduced to methamphetamine, and suddenly I was in control again. In 1999, I walked away from a professional career that I'd held for 15 years. I was no longer able to trust myself. I was unable to pretend that I was okay. And I was unable and unwilling to reach out for any type of help. I was convinced I was a horrible person and a failure at life. In 2000 and 2001, I had 2 arrests. My child entered the system and then went to what they called at the time a foster care diversion, which basically meant that he was moved across state lines and to his father, who was my abuser. When I could actually look at this, on paper and understand it, I was able to talk about it. And what I learned through that is that each one of us has a breaking point. And I know today what mine is. I can also tell you that trauma left unrecognized and untreated destroys lives. So who am I today? Well, I can tell you that I was able to get the help that I needed. I went to inpatient substance abuse and outpatient mental health. I reconnected with my family and friends, and I went on to lead a healthy and productive life. I have over 16 years clean and sober today. I'm remarried. I have a jail ministry and a recovery ministry through our church. My son was returned to my full care and custody, and he's an adult now, a productive adult. Yay! The career that I walked away from, I think it might be important for me to tell you what that career was. I never did return to that previous profession. I had let my license lapse when I walked away. I was a child protective service worker. I have a couple of parting thoughts for you. Everyone listening today has a breaking point. It can be a very dark and a very ugly place. Navigating out of it can seem impossible. The families that you meet out there and come into contact with may be living in that breaking point. Please don't give up on them. You are the hope for families like mine. We may not seem very lovable at times, and the statistics may be against us. But we're depending on you to engage with us so that we can get the help that we deserve.
Thank you, Sherry. Having heard from Sherry, please reflect on a few salient points. 1. Legal implications. A parent may share as little information as possible for fear that the information may be used against them. 2. Showing compassion and communicating hope in the beginning of the relationship can set a tone for the work to come. 3. There are some real challenges in processing information early in recovery that child welfare staff should be mindful of. And finally, 4. Sustained success is largely due to the community of support built around an individual and not necessarily the services alone. Now let's hear from Brittany Walker Pettigrew, a child welfare professional.
I'm Brittany Walker Pettigrew, and I'm a program manager with the Department of Children and Family Services of Alameda County. And I am honored and humbled to be here talking today about comprehensive assessments, which is the bread and butter of our work. Our goal in these assessments is to ensure the safety and well-being of children. But what happens if in the course of our work, and despite our best intentions and our well-meaning policies, what happens if those actions and that work has negative consequences for our families? What happens when we let worry about the worst case scenario interfere with our ability to deliver best practice? What happens when being a good person just isn't enough? What we get in those situations is fear-based assessments and liability-based plans. It turns into an unintentional oppression. But there's good news, because we have the power to mitigate this effect. We do this through thoughtful engagement, because through thoughtful engagement, that leads to balanced and comprehensive assessments. But how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, we start by putting humanity first. These are not high-end, super sophisticated solutions. They're more like common sense, probably what comes naturally to you and instinctively to you. But first thing we do is we remember that we are all people. We are all people with wishes and needs and desires, and we're all trying to get those needs met. I'm doing that as a child welfare worker interacting with you, and the families are doing that, interacting with us. And here's the thing, no one's needs are more important than the other. And if we can remember that, even if we never articulate this in our interaction with the families, if we can remember that, our openness will be communicated non-verbally. Another thing we can be doing and should be doing is acknowledging the existence of difference, especially the presence of privilege. And you know, privilege, it exists back here. We don't have to see it, we don't have to acknowledge it. So to acknowledge the presence of it is to bring it forward. And we can have lots of dialogue, and then perhaps it's another session about our privilege around race and gender and citizenship and education, socioeconomic status, language of origin. But actually, I think the most important privilege that we bring in the room when we interact with our families today is the fact we know how the system works. We speak the language, we know the culture, we know the secret handshake, we know the players. We know that. And the families on the other side, they don't know that. So one of the first ways that we really start to engage families is to acknowledge that up front. And that's how we begin to share power with, but I'll spend more on that a little bit later. But I think we have to be able and willing to talk about this difference. We need to have that willingness in order to acknowledge how those differences are impacting our relationship, how those differences are impacting our communication. And actually, I want to highlight that the willingness is actually more important than your ability. It requires us to hold our hypotheses lightly. You know, any good child welfare professional reads some stuff and then comes up with some theories about how things are going down, but we need to hold that lightly. We need to be open to having our minds changed by what we learn when we sit with a person. We have to be open to the way that our lens is affected by our experiences, just as their lens has been affected by their experiences. This is the foundation of the kind of courageous engagement. And I emphasize the word courageous because it's not always going to feel easy right away. It's going to that little pit in your stomach like, ooh, what's going to happen here? That kind of courageous engagement is what's needed to make a good assessment. What are we doing? And when we're practicing this kind of courageous engagement, well, one, we're looking at our own privilege and we're calling it out. When we do that, we begin to share power with people instead of over people. We talk a lot about empowering people, but empowering people is really sharing power with others. And what are we doing when we're doing that? We're asking questions. We can say things like, what behavior could I have that would demonstrate to you that I'm in support of your goals? What does that look like? What am I doing? Another thing, and this is a big one, listening. But not just listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond. We all are afraid to be stumped. Somebody's going to say something, we're like, I don't know what to say to that. But what I've learned in my experience, 22 plus years in child welfare, is that if I can be fully present and just focus on listening to understand what the person is trying to say, instead of crafting my response halfway through their sentence because I already know the answer, that actually it will come. The answer, the response that I need will come at the end of their sentence. Once I've reaffirmed what it is that they had to say, once I let them know that I do understand, which doesn't mean agreement, just understanding. And we have to acknowledge the clumsy here. I mean, our society does not practice or train having these kinds of conversations very often. So as individuals, we can't expect that we'll be ready to be able to do this just with ease. So we have to just be willing. We're going to have some misses. There's going to be some awkwardness in these kinds of conversations, but it goes back to just being willing. Because if you're willing to keep trying and keep engaging, you will recover. And for the managers in the audience, I would like to encourage you that whatever your locus of control, whatever your locus of influence is, that as managers we can create an organizational culture that supports this kind of bravery by providing coaching for these kinds of discussions, in preparation for these discussions, as a debrief of these kinds of discussions, not punishment when they go awry. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying like, let's allow negligence. I'm not talking about those who are derelict in their duties. I'm talking about the people who engage like this. These are the staff who are doing what we're asking them to do. And they're bravely pushing the level of engagement. And how we support that is by giving them the freedom and the safety to try it on and be open to coaching and not have people be afraid that they're going to get in trouble for trying something and it didn't turn out like they expected, that it was more awkward than they thought. It's already in our nature as social workers to do that. You know, we're like giraffes. Giraffes have these long necks and they just stick their necks out all the time, helping people, and they can't even help themselves. That's just how they're built. Social workers are the same way. We stick our necks out, that's how we're built. And this kind of thoughtful engagement, this is what leads to balanced and thorough assessments. Without this, we are ruled by fear, and there's a myth out there that we cannot plan for safety without fear, but it is not true. Fear actually leads us to make naive assessments. Naive assessments leave out important pieces of information that undermine meaningful case planning. Naivete, it cuts both ways. We have a problem-saturated approach. And when you look at things that way, and it's very common in social services work, your assessments demonstrate that kind of naivete. You take the course or the arc or the chronology of a family's life and you only look at problem, negative event, problem. And you miss a whole bunch of other stuff. You miss what's happening in the gaps, what's happening in between there. Not only is that really off-putting to families, but it pretty much shuts down the interaction. There's no information sharing after that. There's very little collaboration after that. And you miss opportunities as a result. One, because you assume that families are without resources and assets to begin with. And assuming that means that you undermine the resources that actually exist, because you haven't acknowledged that they could be there. And number two, it sort of leads to system dependence. It leads to these cases that we can never close because we never built the community around, we never supported or acknowledged or engaged the community around families that they need to sustain safety and well-being over time. On the flip side, we've all heard about strength-based assessments. And there are some of you out there who are rolling their eyes as we speak about strength-based assessments, that they are a kind of naivete too. And I would say it's the way we use the word strengths. It's the way we define strengths that's the problem. Often, when you're at a teaming meeting or we're talking about strengths, we're listing good things. It's just a list of good things about a family that is a strength. And not really the protective actions, because those are not the same thing. Good things and things that people actually did to help, whether they were effective or not. If you actually engaged in some kind of behavior that was an attempt at being protective, that is something we can work with. When you list good things, you create blind spots. Okay, so let's say we're in a teaming meeting. I'm sure many of you have been in this situation and somebody lists family in the vicinity as a strength. But if that parent is actually estranged from them, never talks to them, those folks don't really have a relationship with the child, they haven't really been able to do any kind of protective action on behalf of the family, then it's not really a strength yet. It's not really something, it may be an opportunity for the future, but for today, it's not really something that we can build on yet. We can't really name the protective actions that they've made. I think also a certain naivete comes in when we put too much weight on acknowledgement. You know, how many of you thought, oh, the parent acknowledges the problem. The parent has some insight into the problem. They have an intention to get some treatment. And too often we believe that acknowledgement plus intention plus insight equals safety. Although I don't think that's true. It's not necessarily true. For instance, parents who neglect their children's basic needs because the substance abuse gets in the way of them being able to do their very best by their kids, they may have some insight into the situation. They acknowledge the problem. They may even have an intention to go get treatment. But if they don't follow through, are their children any safer? So I think that's something we have to pay attention to. We can have a family that maybe isn't ready to acknowledge the problems for a lot of reasons, but is willing to behave in a way that's protective. And I think that's something we have to pay attention to. Acknowledgement plus insight plus intention does not equal safety. So our comprehensive assessments will include both what we're worried about and what protective actions we need to see on behalf of the family or have seen in the past. And behavior is key because it is a harmful behavior that is what creates the danger to the child. It is risky behavior that creates the potential for future harm to the child. It is the sustained protective behavior over time that is what creates safety. So our goals should be behaviorally based. We're asking ourselves, we're asking families, what behaviors do we need to see in order to ensure that the safety and the well-being of the children is being accounted for and attended to? So our comprehensive assessments lead us to develop goals with families, not for families, with families. And to do this, we need to adopt a both-and approach. We can work on some consensus building. We can ask the family, what goals do you have? And maybe our fear is that they're going to say something that's totally off base and misses the point of why we're involved in the first place. It's okay. Let them have the goals that they have. We can have goals too, both and. We can both be right. Let's just put it in there. I challenge you to let the family set the majority of the goals, if not all of them. I mean, even if the family's goal is to just get CPS out of their life, is that not a permanency goal? Let's just go ahead and write it down just as they said it. And keep in mind, assessment is not an event. It is a process. You revisit your assessments over time. You note and celebrate progress. And the small changes are the ones that make the big difference over time. So celebrate those small changes. And when we're struggling, when people are struggling, we make adjustments. Because that's feedback, right? Not failure, it's feedback. Our work has impact on family for the rest of their lives. Even if our touch is short, even if we have a short interaction, or if we spend years, the engagements and the interactions that we have with folks is going to impact them for the rest of their lives and could impact generations to come. But through thoughtful engagement and balanced and comprehensive assessments, we empower families to set a positive course for the trajectory of their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Having heard the voice of child welfare, let's reflect on a couple points. 1, being willing to talk about and be transparent about our privilege. 2, listening to understand, not to respond. 3, that comprehensive assessments include both the behavior we are worried about and the protective behaviors that parents and other family members have demonstrated in the past. 4, safety is demonstrated through protective behaviors, not just acknowledgement, insight, and good intentions. 5, develop protective behavior-based goals in partnership with family. As we go forward in the work and continue to reflect on ideas of comprehensive assessments, let us remember our humanity, to show compassion in order to give hope, to exemplify courageous engagement, and like the butterfly in the hand, let's hold our hypotheses of the families lightly. We are all giraffes of some sort and stick our necks out to reach unattainable places within ourselves. Let us continue to do this in our work. This is D'Artagnan Calaman. Thank you.